Welcome to Leapcast. I'm your host, Dr. George James. Leap stands for leaders, entertainers, athletes, and performers. And I'm on a journey to connect with high achievers and highlight their unexamined human moments. Tune in to learn how these high-achieving Leap individuals were able to reach their greatest potential, face their most difficult challenges, and embrace the human moments that helped them along the way. If you want to get the episode highlights directly in your email, then head to theleapcast.com right now to subscribe. Bring another guest on the show, Kenny Holdsman, who is the CEO, president, and co-founder of Philadelphia Youth Basketball. He's also done a lot of incredible things in his life. So Kenny, welcome to Leapcast. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, George. This is a great pleasure. I've been admiring your work from afar and more of late up close, and I'm delighted to be a part of your program today.
Yeah, Kenny, same here. I guess it's a mutual love affair because I've seen some of the stuff you've done and continue to do, and I'm excited to just learn more about you and what you've been doing. So one of the things we like to do and start off with is call our Leap story, which is just really to kind of understand your journey and how did you get to this place where President, CEO, co-founder of Philadelphia Youth Basketball, but I know you've done a lot of other things leading up to this. So if you could just share a bit of your story and how did you get to this point?
Sure. Yeah. So I, grew up in a township, I think where you're now sitting, called Cheltenham. Yep. And really got turned on to, the idea of service and social justice work and being a part of that struggle for equality and a better world, and always wanted to make that a thread in my life. My dad did flood relief work for the federal government. My mom spent a career in the Philadelphia school district. And that was a really good foundation, coupled with, growing up in a really economically, racially, ethnically integrated community like Cheltenham, and went to college and worked 4 years on Capitol Hill as a legislative aide for a couple different members of Congress. And I was really interested in public policy and the role of government to help people, and especially to help lower income communities and lower income kids of color. Went to law school and did some community work in North Philly that was deeply satisfying. And what was less satisfying, but a great moment of self-discovery for me, was going to work in a big center city law firm, which I did for, I would say, an uninspired 19 months at a wonderful law firm called Ballard Spahr, where I really found out that I didn't want to lawyer, but I did want to, be involved in the struggle, so to speak, in a different way. And that was around community work and in school and out of school time work. So I spent 5 years in the Philadelphia school district, building a service learning and youth leadership program. And it was there that Dr. David Hornbeck, Dr. Aisha Imani, Dr. Greg Carr, all became mentors to me when I was asked to coordinate the Philadelphia Freedom School initiative that had been done only in 2 locations. And my job was to build it out to 20 locations. And we got involved with the Children's Defense Fund and the Black Community Crusade for Children. And Dr. Imani and Dr. Carr, 2 very gifted educators, activists, Black leaders, really gave me a deep indoctrination about what it meant to be a servant leader, and more narrowly, an ally to a struggle that's not your own, but you feel a deep kinship to. And so much of that has, threads of power and privilege. And how does a, white middle-class guy try to have some impact in and around a set of issues that are generations long? And how do I move and position myself in ways where those who are the most afflicted by the struggle can be on the front lines of it. And I can do my part to be an able and reliable and trusted bridge builder. After the school district experience, I did some national work for about 6 years, all in that space of, the way that young people connect with schools, community, the bigger democracy, how kids find voice, value, visibility. And I love doing national work, but I had a deep yearning to get closer to the ground, get more involved and reconnect with my home city. And I spent 6.5 years running Arthur Ashe Youth Tennis and Education, which then became Legacy. And I love that. But a couple years in, any number of people, especially very gifted, caring Black men in the Philadelphia basketball community, would come and visit. And they all had the same narrative, which was that, you've got a great center, an on-court, off-court program, a lot of Black men in positions of leadership, a professionalized organization with a sustainable business model, but damn, if we want to reach a lot of kids at a deep level, why do we see all these organizations popping up for alternative sports and largely ones that are predominated by affluent folk, when in Philly, basketball is really iconic? Very, very low cultural barrier to entry, low economic barrier to entry. And there's a huge pool of coach mentors and those with deep credibility in neighborhoods, many of whom come from the same circumstances in same communities as the kids themselves, that with this vast human capital and cultural connectivity, we need to have this, but for basketball as the primary medium, and then a much deeper academic and leadership and wellness program. So that was the beginning of a lot of conversations. And June 1st of 15, we launched Philadelphia Youth Basketball as a youth development and community empowerment program. And we're now, George, 6 years and change into what I term not a journey, but a quest. And I think you know what the difference is.
Kenny, you said a lot, and I appreciate sharing that. And there's a couple of things I really want to talk about, and I'm curious about. First, when you talk about Cheltenham Township and the diversity there, when I grew up in North Jersey, I was born in Inglewood, spent some time in Teaneck, but most of my school years was in Hackensack, New Jersey. And it wasn't until I left that I thought about how the diversity of that area, even though there was class barriers, there were racial barriers, but I still went to school with predominantly a mix of Black, white, Latino, Latinx, and other racial backgrounds and communities that were just integrated. And when I was looking for a place to live, when I came in the Philadelphia area, I was hoping to find something similar. And so I guess I'm wondering, how did that upbringing shape you, where you were, you talk about your parents doing that work and fighting causes or being involved. You talk about diversity from race and class. How do you think that shaped you and even what you're able to do today?
Mm-hmm. I think what it taught me is that, for starters, we're all human beings. We all want to self-determine and be happy. We generally have similar values. And it taught me that regardless of one's starting point, one's faith tradition, the complexion of one's skin, that we're all to be valued and we're all valuable. And having friendships with people who have walked in different shoes than yourself, people who look different than yourself. All that stuff is to be embraced even more fully.
Mhm.
That all too often, people just retreat into these cocoons of, you know, in every situation they're in or they move into, they kind of replicate what's comfortable. It's that notion of, you go to high school and then you hang out with the same crew that you built in middle school, and then you go to college and you try to replicate and the people, and a lot of times that creates serious homogeneity, I guess.
Mhm.
And one of the things that I got from Cheltenham was you know being comfortable in your own skin, and appreciating people's differences, and not from the level of tolerance, but from the level of like genuine curiosity and appreciation.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's really great because the way that I hear you talk about the work that you're doing now, I think it becomes really hard to do it and to make impact and to build quality relationships if you're not willing to build quality relationships with people who look like you and people who don't look like you, people who have similar backgrounds or diverse backgrounds, whether it be class or race or faith or sexual orientation or wherever it might be. And so I hear that in what you're saying and your passion to really make a difference for young folks. And, as you were sharing, I'm wondering, can you share maybe what sacrifices did you have to make as a leader, as an entrepreneur, as an innovator to get to where you are right now?
Mhm. I don't think of anything that I've done as a sacrifice, and I want to comment on that on two levels.
Right.
One is that you know oftentimes, when you work really hard and you're really committed to the cause, and you fully understand the difference between the importance of the work and the importance of one's own profile in the work, right? When that happens, every now and again, you get public accolades. And one of the pieces of accolade that I most dislike, even though it's well intended, is when somebody will say, Kenny could have been a big firm partner
Mm-hmm.
at a center city law firm and made a lot of money, and look at the way that he's sacrificed, right? And for me, um, I don't like that for two reasons. One is that it's offensive to the overwhelming majority of children and families in the PYB program, would think that my income is really handsome, and I actually think I get fairly compensated, um, and I don't long for anything in a financial sense. I don't long to have a fancy second home or a fancy car, any of that. So it's not monetary, um, and that for me, I have this overdeveloped need to find me.
It's dogs. They're all good.
I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
I think I have an overdeveloped need to derive meaning and purpose and psychic value from my work.
Yeah.
And it's that I receive in abundance. It's bountiful. And I wake up every day really energized and excited to get after it with my colleagues. And so to think about that in terms of sacrifice just seems off to me. I do think that there's moments where I need to try um, to subjugate my own voice and bigness, um, and take a step back and allow others who are in many ways have a deeper connection to the cause and to the community to speak for us.
Mm-hmm.
And there's been a number of instances when, high profile ones, George, when we hosted Kobe Bryant, my voice was not heard, my face
Mm-hmm.
wasn't seen. Ditto for Elena Deladon.
Mm.
I presented very gently with 3 returning citizens who had been incarcerated for a combined 50 years in a major grant presentation. And that was around our new I Am Because We Are program for older youth who have been arrested. And I think what I've learned is that you can, in some ways, take a few steps back to allow those who are more authentic and have a better firsthand view of a situation and allow them to speak powerfully about it,
Yeah.
and not to question whether the concepts or the words or the cadence is the way in which you would have put it. And it's a little bit of that shared and distributive leadership that I'm trying harder and harder to become a pretty skilled practitioner about.
No, I appreciate you really rephrasing the thought of sacrifice. And, one of my mentors would often talk about intrinsic meaning, intrinsic value, and really talking about the things that are internal to us, that matter to us, that are significant to us, to kind of lead by that, right? That if we lead by money or all of these other things, yes, that's important, but sometimes that could really lead us out of purpose or significance. But things that matter to us, it might not necessarily feel like a sacrifice, or that we also recognize that other people are living hard just to try to get to what we're could be calling a sacrifice. So I appreciate that you're sharing that. And you said something that I'm really curious about is like, as you've been developing this leadership model, and you're saying that you recognize there are moments where you have uh, recognized that it was important to either take a step back or make your voice or space or presence smaller and lift up other people, or create or be in the process of creating room for other people. How did you how do you navigate those moments? Like, how are you practicing or even able to know in that moment this might be a time that I should elevate somebody or leave space for somebody else and not take up that space?
Yeah, it's a great question, George. It's become easier to know those moments in the last, 18 months, since the country has had a major awakening around racial justice and structural racism. So, for example, an obvious instance would be when a grant making foundation um, is interested in supporting organizations that are BIPOC led, or that um, lift up uh, Black and brown leaders or whatever. That's a clear signal
Mm-hmm.
to get out the way, or make real room. But then there's more subtle moments that what I wouldn't do is speak to a group of community folks in a church or a school or a community center and tell them all that we're doing and how we are going to help them, when in fact, PYB is an organization that's been built from the grassroots to the treetops of, by, for, and with the community.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, there are a number of able spokespeople in, neighborhoods across our city and region. And I'm really comfortable playing second or third fiddle, or being in the woodwork when the opportunity calls for it. And I just think a lot about how it is that lasting social impact gets made.
Mhm.
And I think that one of the ways is when, in, let's just say, in the Black community in Philadelphia, or more narrowly, in disenfranchised, under-resourced neighborhoods of the Black community of Philadelphia, when there is opportunity created and muscle built, muscle for civic leadership, business leadership, community leadership, then the community has a much greater opportunity to lift itself up and to self-determine, and to work with multiracial, multi-ethnic organizations like ours in genuine partnership. And I think the old model of, the white-led nonprofit with all these wealthy patrons, doing for the poor community, I think it's broken.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of the impact of those kinds of organizations, frankly, are, what I'd call footprints in the desert,
Yeah. Yeah.
because there wasn't legitimate capacity built in and with those communities.
Yeah, I'm glad that you're talking about that, because even as you're sharing, right, the thought of the white savior who's going to come in and help and rescue these poor, disenfranchised folks, when there's a lot of strength and power and capability within these communities. And even to push a little bit further, I think that just when we are in places of privilege, it's often easy for us to say, let me take my privilege and I'm going to come help you who doesn't have that privilege, whatever privilege status you might have. And this is something that I've had to continue to learn even in my own life and in my own work. And as you shared, my wife, who's in public health, she's done a lot around community-based participatory research, right? This thought of doing the work with the stakeholders, not just let me come in and do the work, but no, we're going to start the work with you. We're going to collaborate with you. What are your thoughts? We're going to make that happen. What are our thoughts? We're going to try to make that happen. That it is true partnership, which we know from history, as you're saying, whether it be a nonprofit, whether it be research, whether it be a university, that it's mostly been, we're going to come in and do this. We're going to take all the data and information we need and then leave. So I think it's a really significant perspective that you're saying, and to be true to that, I think takes a lot of self-awareness, and then even beyond that, takes a lot of awareness of the organization and the space that you take up. And so that's why I was curious about how have you navigated those moments, because it has to be almost daily, being aware of who you are, who we are as an organization, and how we take up that space.
Yep. Yeah, that's really well put. And I think at the core of what you're talking about is the P word of power,
Yeah.
or maybe power and privilege. And one of the things that I'm always struck by and trying to get right is people who have um, education and valued experiences and a lot of relationships in many parts of the community, good, earned, trusting relationships. Um, it accrues to the individual, or to me in this case, a lot of power.
Mhm.
And the question is, how do you deploy that and spend it down and build it up and share it in ways that reach its highest and best community purpose? And that's a constant refinement. And now I think about it in the organizational context.
Yeah.
We've got a terrific staff, a terrific board, a great group of advocates and champions, elected officials. I mean, come on, George, we're breaking ground December 15th
Awesome.
on a $25 million center that will be the best and most complete and impactful of its kind anywhere in the country. And so, who works in that center? What businesses co-locate in the center? Who builds the center? Who has designed it? Who influences how culture and climate and programming is going to be shaped? Those are moments upon moments of thinking about that power question
Yeah.
and how to harness all of our human and intellectual capital, social and relationship capital, financial capital, and soon to be like physical capital in the form of a mini campus.
Yeah.
It's took a lot to build that up. Now, how do we, optimize it for its highest and best social impact purpose? That's the stuff that I think about incessantly.
Yeah. I'm amazed and excited about the work that you're doing and the impact, especially sometimes when you drive through neighborhoods, regardless of ethnic background, sometimes more so of lower economic status. You could just see sometimes, wow, what if this thing was there? What if there was a soccer field there? Or what if there was an activity center there? Or what if there was something that could really pull the community together and have, like, especially, I see more and more where rec centers aren't as used or for some reason not available as much. So to hear what you're doing sounds really great. And I definitely want to come back to that. I'm curious though, for you, what would you say with all that you're doing has been one of the biggest like successes that you've experienced, or a successful moment that you've had throughout your career?
Can you repeat that one more time?
Yeah, I was curious to hear for you, what would you say for you would be a successful moment or a successful thing that you were able to accomplish in your career to this point?
Mm-hmm. Well, there's certainly been some high watermarks, but none greater than the day that I was able to share with my staff team, and sadly it was on a Zoom call, but it was with a heart swelling with pride and a face filled with tears, and I said that Alan Horowitz had made a lead pledge of $5 million for our center. And it wasn't just the money, it's that we had been working so hard to build a program and an organization and soon to be a center. But the idea doesn't get off the drawing board until there is somebody or somebodies who say, this is big bet worthy.
Yeah.
And up until that point, any number of promising conversations, but I knew the moment that he was going to put his marker down, that we would have that validation and quickly get to a tipping point. And that's what happened. And it was a major moment in my professional life, not because it was a big piece of change, a big donor, a huge gratitude gift, all that. It was that what the staff team and the board had been working tirelessly on for 5+ years was actually we were gonna get to the top of this mountain.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just exhilarating, satisfying, and all that. And I'll never forget that moment.
Yeah, I've had moments where I've had an idea and have started to see it come to fruition. I mean, I remember doing events for couples, and in a what I thought and believe is a new, innovative, creative way, and just seeing it start to come to life just feels really great. And so, as you're describing this moment, I'm wondering, who did you share that moment with? I know you were talking about with your staff and so forth, but like personally, like how did you talk more with your staff, or was there other people? Like, how did you take in that moment?
Yeah. So it was surreal. I mean, it was that, head spinning, heart pounding, tears welling up. So it was not at all an intellectual thing. It was purely an emotional moment.
Yeah.
And then, I shared it with my wife, Amy, who you know a bit. And then I shared it with our staff team. And then soon after with some of our board leaders. And yeah, there's any number of big visions that are out there um, about ways to really impact societal issues on a big scale. And I don't know if I think of myself as a visionary. I suppose I do. But I also think of myself as somebody um, with a lot of idealism and, but with the ability to take an idea off the drawing board and put it into action. And so that sense of our eyes weren't too big for our stomach, and we could actually think big and put up a really compelling, large vision. Great. Even greater is the ability to make it actionable.
Right.
And,
Right.
and it was that sense of, wow, we are going to do what it is that we set out to do. And I know, how often do you see, young people are disenfranchised communities told that there's something great that is going to happen? We did this in December of 2015 with a big promise that we were going to build a brand new center on the Logan Triangle, which suffered a big sinkhole problem since 1987.
Wow.
And we come out the chutes and saying that we're going to build this world-class center with them in their community. And 3 years in, we saw that it wasn't going to happen, and we pivoted. But we did say to the Logan community, we're sorry, it's not of our doing. We need to find an industrial property to rehab, but know that when we do, we're going to have van service and bus service into your community to make sure that you fully access what it is that we initially promised we'd do. So that for me, there was this fear of over-promising and under-delivering.
Yeah.
There was a fear of being maybe inauthentic. And I'm not one to be driven by fear. That's not what moves me, but I do care a lot, about keeping one's word. And when you bring together a lot of people around a big vision, and you ask them to give time and intellectual expertise and money and connections into their network, you need to make sure, as I've tried to do, that you are putting forward every kernel of physical and intellectual energy that you possibly can to make good on this vision. Because if you're going to try to bring others around it, you better make sure that you yourself are real and you're all in. Because if you're not, why are you asking others to,
Right.
To jump in with you?
No, I love that. And the thought, what you're really raising in my mind is character, right? And there are lots of ways that people can show up. And once again, for folks who have been disenfranchised or traumatized or just sometimes just left, they have experienced, whether personally, whether community, whether systemically, this thought that we're going to make a promise, but if we find a better deal, we're leaving. And so the thought that you're mindful and have been mindful of that, I think is important, because once again, that comes back to like a self-check where we like, what are we really saying? And what are we really standing for? How are we really about impact? Are we really about making difference? And that's hard, right? That's not always easy, because I can imagine from what you're saying, you've had to make some tough choices and some tough decisions. And even as you're talking about fear, and I'm wondering how have you dealt with the moments where there were setbacks or challenges, or when it felt like, I don't know if this is going to happen the way that we kind of drew up? How did you deal and handle that?
Yeah, so I'll give you two examples. One that I think I handled well, and one that I think I handled less well. So let me start with the self-critique first. So we're like 2 years in, we're running programming, and we still have this vision of building in Logan on the triangle, and we were going to help to right a wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved that narrative of not just helping a lot of kids, but helping this community
Yeah.
that had been ravaged by this, donut hole in the middle of Logan. And there were a lot of indications that the real estate developer who had gotten this land from the city, that they were not going to be able to deliver us a sturdy piece of ground to build on. And I think I was blinded by the vision and the narrative of Logan.
You're good.
There was a lot of writing on the walls that this wasn't going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And we probably hung in for 12 to 15 months too long because of my inability to see that the straight line path through wasn't going to happen. And it ultimately, there were two or three people who understood real estate far better than I do. And they said, look, Kenny, love the ambition, love the idealism. This play is not going to happen. You need to set aside, your grandiose ideas and pivot. Yeah. And so I feel like I squandered for our organization a year plus.
Wow.
And look, I regret that to a degree, but we all mature, and I don't think regret is a great emotion to live with if you're going to actively learn from it. And so the next moment was COVID summer of 2020, and we had done what most youth organizations did in March or April of 20. We closed down the in-person programs and we switched to a virtual program. And everything that I was hearing from our program director and our coach mentors was that kids were not feeling the Zoom-based program. Yeah. I mean, the kids we serve were doing school online from 8 to 3. Why are we going to pile on top of that afternoons and evenings? So we had a real conversation internally, and we were the first youth organization in the whole city beginning on August 1st of 2020 to get back in person with kids.
Wow.
And we repurposed the 23rd Street Armory. We made 5 classrooms and 2 courts, and then we picked up space in some office building conference rooms next door. And we began doing programming from 8 in the morning to 8 at night in a COVID environment with masks and sanitization and all the environmental stuff and the reporting. And it was hard because, there's legitimate argument at that time. Wait a minute.
Yeah.
We're going to put our staff in harm's way. We're going to put kids in harm's way. And I went really hard with the argument that it was a public health concern, especially for lower income kids of color who were in school all day online in homes that may have been trauma filled or had frontline workers out there doing their jobs and maybe bringing home the virus. I made a public health argument that kids needed to be back in person with peers and caring adults, and running around and growing socially and athletically and intellectually and all that. And that could have come back in our faces. I mean,
Yeah.
imagine if we were seen as irresponsible and causing a COVID outbreak. But I felt like the risk called for it at the time.
Yeah, I mean, I those are two really big, significant moments where I can hear like having to make some major decisions and how you're navigating between, like you said, the ideal, hopeful scenario, but the reality that comes crashing in, and then taking a major risk, right, in terms of what it was and is needed, or in terms of development, but also countered or juxtaposition around safety and health and how to do that well. And it sounds like your ability to kind of make that decision and to step out there and deal with the fear, but also to feel pretty strongly about it at the same time, was significant. I'm really just in awe of like the things that you've done and continue to do, and you've mentioned some of the events that you've done. You've mentioned some of the people that you've worked with, and I guess as you are doing this work. I'm curious about who, if anybody, would you wish could be involved with this project? If anybody could say, you know what, I hear what you've been doing, and I want to be a part of this, who would you want that to be?
Hmm. There is one person at the top of that heap, and there's many that we would love to be involved, but uh, no one more, in my opinion, than 44 Barack Obama.
Mm.
And the reason, two reasons. One is that um, he understands the power of the game and its connective force. Barack once said in his biography that David Mamarist wrote, Barack Obama is quoted as saying, basketball has always connected the disconnected parts of me.
Hmm.
And you come in as the first black president, and the primary capital improvement you make in the White House is to have a basketball court and to have a game. Um, he understands this in a really innate level. But beyond that, I think he really understands that um, we have a real issue in our country where it's a combination um, of racism, of underinvestment, of maybe underachievement, but there is a huge reservoir, especially of black men and black business owners with enormous credibility in communities who are a bit underengaged, a bit underemployed, and there's this human capital that can be harnessed and galvanized to make positive change. And you see that with his My Brother's Keeper initiative, with the leadership training and his institutes that are going on the south side of Chicago at the new presidential library. That for Barack Obama to put his stamp on the mission and the multiple dimensions of what it is that we're doing would be unbelievable. And yeah, I mean, look, am I, kidding you if I didn't say that we love, Tobias Harris and Joel Embiid and, Sixers owners like Michael Rubin. Yeah, of course. And we think that's forthcoming. But the real reach, in my estimation, would be President Obama.
No, yeah, I could totally see that, and in multiple ways, and the importance of that, and as you mentioned about that quote is really powerful, right? How basketball connected the most disconnected parts of me, and there is that way where people of all different backgrounds, if they play the game, can just get connected, right? Like can just hoop, and enjoy the game and enjoy the camaraderie. And if we're winning and we have a chance to win, it doesn't matter what your background, as long as you got some skill and can be on the court. Uh, so that really brings me to this place. Before we get to like a few questions that I like to ask at the end, you talk about running Philadelphia Youth basketball. You talked about Arthur Ashe return to legacy. So I'm assuming you got basketball skills. I'm assuming you got some tennis skills. Like, are there other sports that you play, or are there other things that, like, you can hold your own in?
Yeah, there are. I am a major generalist. So at Cheltenham High School, I played 4 sports. I was somewhere between average and good in all of them, and very good in none of them. I'm you put a ball, I'm a decent rugby player.
Okay.
I'm a good softball player. I mean, there's a lot of things that I'm like serviceable at. But what my body calls for every other day in between a hoop pickup game or a 2 or 3 set tennis match is getting my behind in the pool and swimming and 0 contact and no pounding and just therapeutic. I'm just turned 54, and I got a lot of guy friends that are still playing basketball at a much higher level than me. And we all aspire to, be running full court into our 70s. And only the lucky few will be able to do that. But for now, I still like to go hard. I mean, I played in a game on Monday night, and our big man was like 67, and I saw a big zipper-like scar running from his knee down to like mid-calf. And I said, "Is that an ACL tear? When was it done?" He said, "ACL tear? This is a total joint replacement." I'm like, whoa, you're moving like that with, a titanium knee? That's crazy.
Wow. Yeah, that is amazing. And I love the game of basketball, and I'm repping Villanova because I went there, but I love Villanova basketball. And I remember those moments, right? Pickup games, and having a partial tear of my ACL where I had to have surgery. But there is just something about it, and that's great for you that it sounds like you're still actively playing basketball and tennis. And I would assume if you're running this organization, you have to have some skills because you need to hoop on some level.
Yeah, I'm a good. I used to say a below the rim player. I actually think now I'm a below the net player. But one of the things that changes as we grow older is like standards and expectations. I mean, will I have any number of 6 a.m. pickup games at our center? Of course, and I can't wait for that.
Nice.
But my standard is, do I enjoy the people? Number one.
Yeah.
Do I get a good sweat? Number 2. Number 3, do I not get hurt?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, do I play well and do my teams win? That's like way down the food chain. And it wasn't like that in my 30s. Mm-hmm. If I played and I didn't like, I threw the ball away, or I lost my man on defense and didn't knock down shots, I'd be chafing until the next time I got back out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I just have a totally different, mind space about that.
No, I totally get that. And for me, even like the start of like the camaraderie, the fun, the laughter, if I could walk away with that, then it's a win, right? Like, of course we like to be able to show up in most things in life or in sports and be competitive, or at least be decent. But sometimes, or for me, most of the times, if you just have a good time that you can say, you know what, I missed a shot, or I missed my, I didn't defend as well, but I'm going to remember that, or there was some good jokes or some good trash talking. That's enough. It'll hold me for that. So there's a few questions I'd like to ask at the end that I'll kind of put your way. One, what would you say that you're working on right now? Like, you mentioned the center and your development to it, and groundbreaking coming up. What would you say is like your big thing that you're working on, or that's kind of on your list right now?
Hmm. One of the things we're trying to work on is crystallizing what we think of as the PYB way of dealing with young people and building powerful, trusting relationships that then can, in some way, become transformative for the young person. And, I'll go visit programs and I see some of our coach mentors and I'm like, wow, Jaron Garner or Darren White Green, they just have that it.
Mm-hmm.
Kids connect and resonate to them. They know how to facilitate a classroom conversation. They know how to, be on court. They seize all those teachable moments with kids. Um, but you can't build an organization just with the superstars. What we need to do is those who are average, how do we get them to well above average and very good? And those who are above average or very good, how do they become great?
Yeah.
And so what are the attributes and how do we disaggregate them, break them down, explain them well, and then use them as a basis
Mm-hmm.
to hire, to train, to professionally develop, to give continuous improvement and ongoing feedback. You know, that to me, at the end of the day, like, look, I love what we're doing with our programming and with our center, but at the end of the day, it's the relationships between the adults whom we put into the lives of kids and the kids themselves. And I want that to be what it is that we are top in class for, what we're known for, what the secret sauce is. And it takes a while to,
Mm-hmm.
to grow to greatness in that way.
Yeah, no, I love that. Like you said, the building blocks or the ingredients for the secret sauce, the PYB way, the what are our core values, what are our themes, what are the our internal even deliverables of how we get to impact the youth and the participants and the people who come out, and for your coach mentors, and right, developing that, then that becomes like a philosophy. I mean, you see this in lots of sports teams, right? Coaches and teams, they have a way that they go about it. Whether it's all offense all day, let's run, 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 or whether it's defense, lock it down, or a perspective, and it could change from team to team, from coach to coach. And I could hear, your desire to say, oh, well, this is the PYB way. This is how we do it and how we develop it. Another
And
thing I like to go ahead.
and how to do that in a way that allows everybody to really um, harness their own personality, their own lived experience, and then to deploy it in a really powerful way. Not everybody is, the most charismatic man or woman on the block.
Right, right.
So if that's not your lead card, how is it that you're connecting in ways that pull on your most authentic self? So, we're not interested in creating a bunch of cookie cutter kind of, it's not that, but there does need to be those common threads.
Yeah, in another episode with another guest who has worked with Coach K, he shared how Coach K would invite players to bring their ego to the game, right? Like to not diminish who you are, and let's find a way how to work together as a team. And so, like you said, like not everybody's going to be the charismatic kind of gregarious person, but to bring their full self, and that, you know, in a lack of a better phrase, will coach them up to the place where it can be the best for them with their personality. I'm wondering, what would you say uh, mental wellness means for you?
Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of elements or pieces to mental wellness. Um, I think one of those aspects is that um, you love yourself and you feel uh, valued by those around you. I think that whether I think about this in the context of me or my colleagues or the young people that we serve, um, feeling as though you matter and you have worth and efficacy in the community, um, to me is a huge ingredient to mental wellness. I think another is the ability to uh, own and share one story.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes those stories are trauma filled or they're less than flattering. Um, and I think it's really hard to achieve mental wellness if you are not at peace with who you are and what you've done to this point, um, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Um, I think for me, mental wellness does have a dimension of feeling authentic and in your relationships with those closest to you. Um, I feel that way with my wife, my kids, my parents. Um, uh, I'm spiritual.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I believe in God, and there's moments where I think I'm more aware of my spirituality than others. But I think there's a lot of ingredients to mental wellness. Um, but it really begins for me with waking up in the morning and feeling as though you are deserving of being happy and deserving of feeling valued.
Yeah.
And I think I'm lucky in that I've never questioned that, and always felt um, blessed in not wondering whether I could get out of bed in the morning and walk into any environment or any space and feel as though I had something noteworthy to contribute.
Yeah. No, I really, like that, and the thought of, yeah, there's different components to it, and being able to see your value, know your value, or even remind yourself of your value is crucial. Last question: what mental wellness advice would you give to your younger self? And that could be as younger as yesterday or many years in the past.
Huh? That's a great question. Um, I would say to, uh, I think when I was younger, um, I think I took myself too seriously. I think I was too eager to achieve and to have success come quickly and kind of to just slow things down a little bit. And that doesn't mean to be complacent, but um, now that I'm 54 and I think, that this is a long game. You come out of college and assuming you have the blessing of good health, there's 50 years or more to make your mark in the world.
Yeah.
And you don't need to get up there, you know, job one or job two and knock the cover off the ball. That there's a reason why there are people mid-career and towards the end of their career who are doing amazing things, and that's because they have built a set of knowledge and skills and experiences that over time accrue to some real value. So I don't know. I think that patience factor,
Yeah.
um, and look, I'm still impatient. Um, what I work on all the time, George, is the middle path. How do you balance patience and persistence? How do you balance grit and grace,
Yeah.
effort and ease? And by nature, I'm a hard charger, and I like to get after it. And every now and again, I need to be reminded, slow down.
I really like that. And once again, like this dichotomy that we're wrestling with, especially when we're trying to make an impact or just do something, achieve. And sometimes, we do need to just slow down, or as they say, fall back. And, for myself, I could resonate with that where I even find myself now is a level of just appreciation for the journey and excitement for what's yet to come in a way that's different than before when I'm like, it has to be here. Kenny, I really appreciate you being a part of Leapcast and sharing your story and these moments and just being willing to like be in this conversation with me. I really, really appreciate your time and your thoughts. Once again, everybody, this is Leapcast. I'm Dr. George James, and we've just been exploring some of these unexamined human moments with amazing high achievers, leap individuals. And today we've had Kenny Holdsman, who is president, CEO, and co-founder of Philadelphia Youth Basketball. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, George. This is a great pleasure.
Wow, what an incredible ride we just went on with another great member of the Leapcast community. I appreciate you listening and hope you got some tangible value from the episode. Please let us know what you think by leaving a comment, rating, and review. As always, please don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. This is Dr. George James, and I'll see you next time.